I'm currently ranked #1 on the APP Tour, having over 20 medals, and here are one of the unique traits that have helped my game progress farther and better than some of the other players. And this is one of the physical traits that I never see talked about in the pickleball space, and I'm going to break it down in depth today about how I became ambidextrous. So what is ambidexterity? Being ambidextrous is defined as a person being able to use the right and left hands equally well. And so obviously this is a super rare trait. Most people are born righty, with 10% of the population being lefty, with only 1% of the population being truly ambidextrous, meaning proficient and using both hands with equal skill. And this comes with some cool perks. If you're ambidextrous, you're able to write with both your right and left hand. You're able to eat with a spoon, brush your teeth. Now, being able to do tasks no matter what it is with your right or left hand and just pick and choose between which one is a super cool trait that I wish I had growing up just naturally. Today, I'm gonna break down how I became ambidextrous at a very young age, how I built a very unique play style around that, and some of the things that you guys can do as viewers in order to build more use of both hands. So my ambidextrous journey began with an injury. I started playing baseball for 7 years, up to the point where I was 10 years old. I traveled for it, I loved it, it was my first sport that I started playing, and then bang, one weekend I was overthrowing as a pitcher and I fractured my growth plate in my right shoulder, and that caused my baseball career to come to a halt. Now, while I was very young and 10 years old at this point, I was traveling for Team USA, and I did really want to play in the MLB one day. But the doctors told me that I was out for 3 to 6 months while I was in a sling and it was recovering, so I was out of sport. So while I was in a sling with my right hand, which is my naturally dominant hand, my dad invited me out to just dink around on a pickleball court while I was injured, just in order to play a sport. Now, because of my sling being in my right hand, I could only hit with my left hand, and so especially not coming from a racket sports background, this was the first time I've ever held a paddle or a racket of some sort, so it felt certainly off using my offhand. But after those 3 months, and I was just dinking around during that time, after those 3 months, I took my sling off my right hand, and it felt more natural to keep my paddle in my left hand because of the mechanics that I built during those 3 months. And so a lot of these mechanics tailored to pickleball, such as dinking or hitting a drop or hitting a volley, all is low to high motions below your hip level, so it felt very natural with my left hand. But since I grew up as a pitcher in baseball, the overhead, serve, and drive mechanics that involved a lot more torque and twist and upper body mechanics, I still kept with my right hand because I still felt more natural throwing. However, over time, I became known as the kid who switches hands, the ambidextrous kid, and so while I was traveling to these tournaments, I started dinking with both hands, countering with both hands, volleying with both hands, hitting serves and drives with both hands, and I quickly became known as the ambidextrous kid, or the kid who switches hands. And so for those first few years of me playing pickleball when I was 10, 11, and 12, it became very fluid for me to switch hands, and especially since it was such a slow sport back then, I didn't really get punished for switching hands compared to today's game, which we'll talk about later. And because back then there were no such things as tours, I was competing at the US Open or Nationals, and because it was so easy for me to switch hands, I developed both wings, and that's kind of what I became known for. Now, even though I was young, I remember doing things around the house with my left hand just in order for it to still feel more natural. And this is where I coined the term artificial ambidexterity. I wasn't born naturally ambidextrous. I built off of it because of my injury with my growth plate, and now just because of practicing and training my brain, I feel like I can do everything with both hands. And back then I was trying to train myself to use my left hand more. I was trying to eat out of bowls and food when I had dinner with my left hand. I was trying to use my phone with my left hand. I was trying to do as much as possible in order to train my brain to get more comfortable doing these more refined mechanics with my left hand. So though I can't write with my left hand, everything else I can do equally. And so now, after training my left hand a little bit more than my right hand, there has been a little bit of a tilt towards my left hand being more dominant. Right now, my lefty duper is around a 6.6, ranking me 25 in the world roughly, and my righty duper is probably around a 5.5. And this makes it fun because when I teach lessons and stuff, I can still play righty and provide my clients with a different perspective or a different level of play depending on what they want. So getting introduced to using both hands at a very young age is also something that I want to do for my kid. If my kid comes out a righty, I really want to push him to be a lefty just because it's more of an advantage, and if they can learn to become ambidextrous as well, then that's going to provide a huge edge in any single sport that they play. Now, when I was 12 years old, I took a 5-year break to focus on my high school academics as well as my basketball, but then I got back into the sport when I was 18. After not touching a paddle for 5 years, I finally picked up a paddle, and guess what? It still felt more natural for me to play with my left hand. Except this time, I really wanted to hone hone in my lefty side because I knew how much of an advantage it was in pickleball. So while I still wanted to remain ambidextrous, I wanted to focus on being a lefty. And so I started training it. Exactly what I was doing when I was 11, 12 years old. I started eating, brushing my teeth with my left hand, and one of the biggest things was fixing my lefty overhead, which I've been working on for the past 2 years, is getting a foam ball or a pickleball and just throwing it inside of my house while I'm on a call or while I'm watching a show or something like that. And it just helps you build the correct mechanics of throwing, which is exactly what an overhead is. Now, it's rare to see someone ambidextrous on the pickleball court, but let's talk about some of the perks. First of all, you have a massive reach advantage on wide balls, digs, and overheads. And just to demonstrate the extra reach that you get when you have your entire wingspan, look at this. Notice, if I only use my left hand for defense, I lose this 2 feet right here. And so if I'm able to quickly switch hands across my body, I now get my entire wingspan rather than losing those extra 2 feet. So on overheads and stuff, when they hit an angle or a short ball or something like that, rather than turning across your body, you're actually able to just reach. Also, the difference in spin. Your opponent will never know what spin you are going to hit on it. Whether you're slicing a forehand as a lefty or a righty, or adding topspin as a lefty or righty, it will come a little bit differently just off of the angle that you're connecting with the ball. So one thing that I used to do was pull people off the court with my forehand serve depending on which side of the court I was serving. For example, if I was on the deuce side of the court, I'd hit a righty serve and hit that side topspin to try to pull them off the court that way. And if I was on the ad side of the court, I'd try to hit a lefty serve in order to pull them off the court with their backhand. And as we all know, it confuses your opponents because there's no real safe spot. With 2 forehands, you have double the firepower, and it's very tough for your opponent to get in a good rhythm with a good strategy. Your opponents can often get on tilt, and then their patterns break, and then they just implode. And obviously, you have more options in hands battles, redirects, and just any other shot in the game, because if a ball is behind you, instead of reaching for a backhand right here, now you can turn and just scoop it with a forehand. And so at the pro level, how do I use ambidexterity? Some of the biggest ones being overheads. Being able to defend a lob, whether it goes over your right or left shoulder, is a huge trait that once again confuses your opponents and puts them on tilt. And the biggest one is gaining that reach advantage when you're out of position and you can't take a step, so all you have to do is switch hands, and now you can get behind the ball a lot better compared to if you were hit a backhand, then you'd have to turn your body. You can get a lot more behind you by hitting that extra forehand rather than a backhand right here. So technically, this allows you to cheat more. For example, I can cheat more middle, and then if a ball gets pulled behind me, I don't have to worry about hitting a backhand. I can just switch hands to then get behind the ball. It enhances cognitive flexibility and brain hemisphere communication. Research actually shows that ambidextrous people score higher in spatial awareness and motor control. It can also lead to better reaction times and adaptability in sports. And it improves neuroplasticity, which is training both sides, giving you a better long-term skill retention. So while I wasn't born ambidextrous, let's talk about how I trained for artificial ambidexterity. Just doing daily habits to develop your offhand. Brushing your teeth, eating meals, throwing against a wall, or foam ball drills are all great examples of training yourself to develop those motor skills with your offhand. Accept that it'll feel awkward at first and embrace it. Trust me, those first 3 months, I was just happy to be out playing. So it didn't feel like it was annoying. I was just happy. It's changing your perspective to just dreading hitting with your offhand to learning that it's a process and knowing that one day it's gonna feel better. And what I did, start with dinks and then move your way back to drops and then do resets and then do counters. There are levels of difficulty for each shot, so make sure that you focus on the right ones first to develop good mechanics. And stick with it. Trust me, it will pay off over time. It became instinctual after 2 or 3 years, so trust me, it's a longer process, but it will pay off. Stronger brain connectivity, better spatial awareness, and greater cognitive flexibility are a few examples that stretch outside of pickleball. And like what I did, since it's so rare, use it to brand your game as some sort of wow factor. Starting out, before people knew my name, I was known as the kid who switches hands. And so if you want to be known for something unique on the court, this is a great way to brand. You can train it, it's not just natural, it's possible for you. Now, ambidexterity is one of the many ways that I've helped brand myself in a unique way. So go try it out for yourselves. Comment down below whether you've ever played against an ambidextrous player or whether it feels natural or not for you. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all next week.